The crowd gasped as the billionaire's foot sent the woman's meager belongings flying across the marble floor. He laughed at her poverty, fueled by a bitter past and a heart hardened by greed. Never realizing the woman he was kicking held a secret that would ruin him by sunset. The tables were about to turn in the most public and devastating way possible. He thought he was destroying a beggar, but he was actually challenging a queen. You won't believe the price he paid for his arrogance. Welcome, my story-loving family. Before we dive into today's exciting story, I have a humble request. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your support really helps our community grow. The heavy glass doors of the luxury shopping mall swung open, letting in a gust of cold winter air that matched Elena's shivering heart. She clutched her worn coat tighter, her fingers brushing against the fabric she had stitched herself a dozen times. This mall was a world of gold and marble, a place where she once belonged before the world collapsed around her feet. Every step she took felt heavy, burdened by the memories of a life that had been stripped away by the man she once trusted with her soul. The scent of expensive perfumes and polished floors felt like a mockery of her current reality, a constant reminder of how far she had fallen since the divorce papers were signed. People walked past her with indifferent glances, seeing only a woman who looked out of place among the glitter and wealth. She wasn't here to shop for diamonds or designer bags. She was here to find a simple gift for her young daughter's birthday, something small to bring a flicker of light to their cramped, dim apartment. Hope was a fragile thread, but she held on to it tightly, unaware that the ghosts of her past were waiting just around the corner. Mark stood near the fountain, the center of an admiring circle, draped in a suit that cost more than Elena's yearly rent. He looked every bit the successful tycoon he had become by stepping over her broken spirit and draining their joint accounts. When his eyes landed on Elena, the warmth in his expression vanished, replaced by a cold, sharpened cruelty that she knew all too well. He didn't see the mother of his child. He saw an eyesore, a stain on his perfect, polished, new life. He approached her with a stride full of unearned confidence, his polished shoes clicking loudly against the marble. With a sneer that twisted his handsome features into something hideous, he began to unload a barrage of insults, his voice echoing through the atrium for everyone to hear. He mocked her tattered shoes and the way her hair looked unkempt from long shifts at the local diner. Then, fueled by a sudden surge of performative malice, he lashed out physically, his foot connecting with her shopping bag, sending her humble purchases skittering across the floor. Kay called her a parasite, a ghost of a failure, and told her she deserved the gutter. The crowd watched in stunned silence as he humiliated her, laughing at her visible distress and the tears that began to blur her vision. The air in the mall suddenly shifted, turning icy and still as a group of suited security men moved through the crowd with military precision. They didn't move toward the disturbance to stop it. They moved to form a protective corridor for someone approaching from the private elevator. A tall man in a charcoal overcoat stepped forward, his presence commanding the attention of every person in the building. This was Julian, a man whose name was whispered in boardroom halls, and whose wealth was legendary. He stopped inches away from Mark, who was still mid-laugh, his foot still raised in a mocking stance. Julian didn't look at Mark. He looked down at Elena, his expression softening into one of profound respect and protective love. He reached out a hand, lifting her from the cold floor with a gentleness that shattered Mark's ego in an instant. The realization hit the crowd like a physical blow when Julian tucked Elena's arm into his, addressing her as his wife. The poor woman Mark had just insulted was the partner of the most powerful man in the city. Mark's face drained of all color, his arrogance turning into a mask of pure, unadulterated terror as the tide turned. The silence that followed was heavier than the insults. Mark tried to speak, his voice cracking as he attempted to apologize, but Julian's gaze remained fixed and unforgiving. There would be no mercy for the man who thought he could trample on human dignity without consequence. Within minutes, Mark was escorted out of the building by security. His reputation in tatters and his business contracts already being cancelled by Julian's associates via a single phone call. Alina stood tall, her hand resting on Julian's arm. Not out of a need for his money, but because she had finally found someone who saw her worth. The mall went back to its bustling self, but the lesson remained etched in the minds of those who witnessed the scene. True wealth is never found in a bank account or a designer suit. It is found in the way we treat those who have nothing to offer us. Betrayal had tried to break her, and injustice had tried to bury her, but Alina had risen from the ashes of her old life. She walked out of the mall not as a victim, but as a woman who knew that her value was intrinsic and unshakable. Thanks for watching. Where are you watching from? Comment the name of your city.